Hello, my name is Mike Ricadio, and I am an LCSW in California. Today I wanted to talk about the role of shared fantasy in unhealthy relational dynamics. So, for some of us, the reality that we experience for various reasons uh, was painful or uncomfortable. And so, what can occur is we can begin to over rely on our fantasy world. So if we look at our culture today, um, there's a lot of fantasy, reality TV, gaming, um, the list goes on and on. And within those is a version of the world that does not coincide with everyday life, the way things are. Oftentimes, when our early experiences of connection wounded us for various reasons, we can begin to relate to the person who wounded us or to future people in terms of a fantasy connection. This is kind of the fairy tales of, someone's going to come and fix everything, or once I meet the right person, or get the right job, or my family changes, or whatever the case is, um, we start to rely on that fantasy because when we're connecting to that idea that once I arrive, fill in the blank, I'll be happy, we actually experience regulation in our nervous system. And so we become quite addicted to that. This um, addiction to a fantasy of arriving one day. In practice, I would say most people that I work with are addicted to that fantasy, and that's where most of their pain's coming from because they're not dealing with their life on life's terms. They're dealing with their fantasy or their perceived barriers that they think are coming externally to that fantasy coming to fruition, which in reality the fantasy is never going to come into fruition. My spiritual teacher, he one of his direct quotes is, um, "We get what we want, but not in the way that we wanted," and I think that that is reality. We can definitely aspire for more different, but oftentimes we become very addicted to the fantasy of the experience we imagine we're going to have once we receive it. And if you've been fortunate enough to get what you wished for, you know that that doesn't happen, or that it doesn't last, or that it doesn't fix your problems. So, oftentimes in a relationship, what we do is we both show up in a way that isn't in line with who we actually are, and we present ourselves as our fantasy version of ourselves, our false self, and so does the other person. And we begin to talk about and create this fantasy relationship. I'll never get hurt like I was before. I'll never sabotage like I do in every relationship. Fill in the blank, and then we connect through that shared fantasy. So we're actually not connecting to each other. We actually don't know each other. What we know is a fantasy, and who we try to present ourselves in that relationship is also a fantasy. It's not in line with our everyday life, our idiosyncrasies, our challenges. And so, what I encourage you to do, especially when processing past pain, is to look at where was the fantasy, because that's where a lot of our ongoing resentment, which is our unprocessed grief, our depression comes from, is we believe we were robbed from something that never existed. So I hope that makes sense. If you have questions, let me know, but really be careful and look at in your past painful relationships how you guys actually had a shared fantasy. You never saw each other because once you saw each other, that's when it ended. So I hope that you have a great day, and thanks.